What if I told you that once a year, the most powerful people on Earth gather in a tiny frozen village, claim they're solving world problems, and then leave on private jets while everything gets worse? What if the entire system wasn't broken, but working exactly the way it was designed to? What if democracy was just the opening act, and the real show happens behind doors you'll never enter? Welcome to Monetary Archaeologist, where we dig through the ruins of power to find the truth buried beneath. If you want to understand how money really moves the world, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to see what we uncover. Picture this, a sleepy mountain town in Switzerland, snow falling on expensive hotels, helicopters slicing through fog, black SUVs crawling through checkpoints like ants marching to a queen, security everywhere, cameras flashing, the world's richest and most powerful people all heading to the same place. This isn't a movie. It happens every single January. Presidents, billionaires, tech giants, people who control more money than entire countries. They all fly into Davos, Switzerland, a place so remote most people couldn't find it on a map. And once they're there, they talk. They talk about inequality, about saving the planet, about building a better future for all of humanity. Then they fly home in their private jets. Markets reopen, and somehow every single year the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, the gap widens. The system keeps grinding forward. Nothing changes, except the branding. So what's really happening in those Swiss mountains? Why does this event matter? And more importantly, who gave these people the power to shape our world without ever asking for our vote? Let me take you back to where this all started. It's 1971. A 33-year-old German engineer named Klaus Schwab has an idea. He wants to bring European business leaders together for a conference. Not flashy, not political, just a symposium about management and how to run companies better in a changing world. He picks a resort town in Switzerland, invites about 450 executives, and calls it the European Management Symposium. Honestly, it sounds boring, right? Like a corporate retreat where people talk about efficiency over coffee. But here's the thing, timing is everything. That same year, something massive happens. The United States abandons the gold standard. For decades, the value of money around the world was tied to gold. It kept things stable, predictable. But when President Nixon ended that system, everything changed. Suddenly, money wasn't backed by anything physical anymore. It became flexible. Governments could print more. Inflation started creeping up. The old rules were collapsing. And corporations? They realized they didn't need to play by national borders anymore. Schwab's little conference arrived at the perfect moment. Governments were losing control of the economy, but corporations were learning to thrive without them. And Switzerland? It was the perfect place to host this new kind of gathering. Neutral, wealthy, private. A country famous for keeping secrets and protecting money became the natural headquarters for a club nobody voted for. At first, Davos was small, exclusive, just another fancy conference where rich guys in suits talked shop. But Schwab wasn't satisfied. He didn't just want to host meetings. He wanted to build something bigger, a platform where the most powerful economic players could coordinate, quietly, efficiently. The 1970s were chaos, oil shocks, economic crisis, governments scrambling to respond. But while politicians struggled, corporations adapted fast. They were global now, borderless, and Davos gave them a stage. By the 80s, this wasn't just a conference anymore. It was an institution, an unofficial parliament for the new economy. The people who showed up weren't just business leaders. They were shaping the future of entire industries, entire nations. And then, in 1992, Schwab made a brilliant move. He changed the name. The European Management Symposium became the World Economic Forum. Notice how official that sounds, like it's part of the United Nations or something. But here's the truth, it's not. The World Economic Forum isn't a government body. It's not elected. It's not accountable to any public authority. It's a private foundation, a members-only club. But by giving it that name, Schwab made it feel legitimate, important, essential, and world leaders started showing up. Presidents arrived to prove their countries were open for business. Finance ministers came to signal stability to markets. CEOs came to network and whisper into the ears of people writing laws. Davos wasn't just a meeting place anymore. It was a mirror, a place where power came to see itself reflected and celebrated. Then something huge happened. The Soviet Union collapsed. For the first time in modern history, capitalism stood alone. No rival ideology, no competing vision for how the world should work.
Communism was dead. Democracy and free markets won, or so the story goes. The World Economic Forum seized that moment. It rebranded capitalism as progress itself. Globalization wasn't just an economic policy, it was a moral mission, the new universal truth. And Davos became its temple. Politicians from Washington to Moscow to Beijing made the pilgrimage. Oligarchs, bankers, tech founders, everyone who wanted to be part of the new global elite came to these mountains to be anointed, to get their credentials stamped, to prove they belonged. That's the genius of what Schwab built. Davos didn't fight governments, it absorbed them. It didn't conquer power, it invited it in. It offered something every leader craves: access, legitimacy, a seat at the table, and everyone wanted one. So how does this actually work? How does a private conference gain this much influence? Simple: money and membership. To join the World Economic Forum as a basic corporate member costs around $60,000 a year. Not cheap. But that's just the entry level. If you want real access, if you want to become a strategic partner, you're paying over $600,000 annually. And who are these strategic partners? BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Microsoft, Pfizer, Google, BP. The biggest corporations on the planet. What do they get for their money? Direct access to the people who write laws, the officials who negotiate treaties, the central bankers who control interest rates. You see those public panels about climate change and equality? That's the show. That's for the cameras. The real business happens in private rooms, away from journalists, away from voters, just CEOs and ministers quietly aligning interests. No votes, no transparency, just influence. And here's the thing, it's not illegal. That's what makes it so brilliant. This isn't a conspiracy in a smoky basement. It's a system working exactly as designed. When you put the world's most powerful economic actors in the same room, they don't need to plot. They just align, naturally, effortlessly. Every year, Davos picks a theme, a slogan, something that sounds visionary and hopeful. The Fourth Industrial Revolution, stakeholder capitalism, the Great Reset. Beautiful words, right? They sound progressive, forward-thinking, like they're really trying to fix things. But look closer. Every single theme points in one direction, toward policies that make global capital more stable, more predictable, more profitable. Take the Great Reset. That was the big slogan after the pandemic hit in 2020. The idea sounded amazing. Rebuild the global economy to be fairer, greener, more sustainable. But what actually happened? Massive government spending that funneled billions into private hands. Infrastructure projects built by the same corporations sponsoring the forum. Green energy initiatives that created new markets for the same old players. The world was being reset, all right, but by the people who already owned it. That's the real power of Davos. It doesn't pass laws. It shapes the vocabulary that laws are written in. It doesn't dictate markets. It defines what counts as moral in the first place. When the companies profiting from pollution sponsor panels on climate change, that's not hypocrisy. That's strategy. If you control the narrative of reform, you never have to face the cost of it. But Schwab didn't stop at hosting meetings. He wanted to build something that would last, something that would embed itself into the future. So he created the Young Global Leaders Program. This initiative trains future presidents, executives, and influencers. It builds a network of people who speak the same language, share the same worldview, believe in the same ideas about progress and efficiency. These aren't puppet masters pulling strings. They're true believers. They genuinely think globalization, tech-driven solutions, and public-private partnerships are the best path forward. And that's more powerful than any conspiracy. Because they don't need to be controlled. They already agree. By the 2000s, Davos had evolved from a conference into a culture, a way of thinking, a priesthood of progress where the high priests wore suits instead of robes and worshipped efficiency instead of gods. Here's what makes Davos so hard to fight. It never claims to rule. It claims to help. It doesn't force anyone to do anything. It just creates the conditions where certain decisions feel inevitable. When everyone important agrees on what's reasonable, disagreement starts to look extreme. Climate change becomes a financial product. Healthcare becomes a market. Poverty becomes an opportunity for impact investing. Every crisis, every cause gets folded into the system as long as it generates returns. That's why criticism bounces off. If you call it greedy, it responds with philanthropy. If you question its legitimacy, it invites you to participate. Rebellion gets repackaged as collaboration. Every year, the contradictions get more obvious. Private jets lined up while leaders talk about carbon neutrality. Billionaires discussing inequality over champagne.
A village of 12,000 people hosting an event that burns more fuel in a week than some towns use in a year. And yet, nobody stops coming. Because skipping Davos means admitting you're irrelevant. For politicians, it signals legitimacy. For corporations, stability. For rising powers, access. The public panels are theater. The real value is behind closed doors. Deals, partnerships, alignments that shape policy for years to come. But here's the problem. Outside those glass walls, something's breaking. People are angry. Trust is collapsing. Populism is rising on both the left and right. Economic despair is spreading. More and more, ordinary people sense that decisions are being made somewhere else, by people they'll never meet, in rooms they'll never enter. And they're right. The machinery of global coordination has outgrown democracy's reach. Davos, once a symbol of international cooperation, now feels like proof that the system is rigged. The same people who profit from the system are the ones deciding how to fix it. The same institutions that caused the crashes are the ones writing the rules for recovery. And every time they promise reform, the outcome is the same. The rich get richer, and everyone else gets managed. That's the unspoken truth hanging in the alpine air every January. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. History has seen this before. Every empire builds a story to justify its power. Rome had its Senate. The Church had its cardinals. Colonial powers had their conferences in European ballrooms where they divided the world and called it progress. Today, we have Davos. The names change, the rituals evolve, but the pattern stays the same. A small group of people accumulate enormous power. They create institutions that legitimize that power. They speak in the language of morality and progress while protecting their own interests. And for a while, it works. The system holds. But empires built on their own certainty always collapse under their own logic. When influence replaces accountability, correction becomes inevitable. Right now, Davos still commands attention, but the illusion is cracking. The gap between the rhetoric and the reality is too wide to ignore. People are waking up to the fact that stakeholder capitalism is just shareholder capitalism with better PR. And when that realization spreads, when enough people stop believing in the benevolence of the system, the next great reset won't come from a summit in Switzerland. It'll come from below. So what's the takeaway here? Is Davos evil? Is it a conspiracy? No, it's something more dangerous. It's a perfectly legal, perfectly visible system where power coordinates itself without needing permission. It's the natural evolution of a global economy that outgrew national borders and democratic oversight. Davos is what happens when capitalism becomes a culture, not just an economy. When the people who benefit most from the system are also the ones tasked with saving it. when every problem gets turned into a profit opportunity and every solution protects the status quo. The real power of Davos isn't secrecy, it's alignment. It's the quiet agreement among the world's elite that no matter what crisis comes next, the basic rules of the game will stay the same. Free flow of capital, protection of markets, the belief that those at the top are best qualified to manage everyone else. But history doesn't work that way. Systems that refuse to change eventually break, and when they do, the people who thought they were managing the world discover they were only managing themselves. One day, maybe soon, the world outside those snow-covered walls will stop listening. The next generation won't buy the slogans. The trust will be gone, and the empire built in the Alps will face the same fate as every empire before it, because power that doesn't answer to the people never lasts. It just pretends to until it can't anymore. If this opened your eyes, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. There are more buried truths, more hidden systems, more stories the powerful don't want you connecting. I'm the monetary archaeologist, and every week we dig deeper into the ruins of power to find out who really runs the world and why. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and I'll see you in the next excavation.